Here at this quaint little butcher's shop in the Netherlands, Chef is preparing a worldwide fast food favorite. Fries, coleslaw, and golden fried chicken nuggets. They're easy to take for granted, but the seemingly humble chicken nugget is anything but. These shape-shifting pieces of salty, fatty, reconstituted deliciousness are an example of everything that industrial food has sought to achieve over the past 200 years. The farms, factories, and processing plants of today produce food like this en masse and distribute it across the world. But this particular nugget holds a secret that may just change the entire system that created it. This is the story of the industry of food. For thousands of years after its invention, farming and agriculture remained fundamentally the same. Most families lived off their own land, cultivating their own gardens and raising their own livestock. A typical family dinner: homemade bread, preserved vegetables from this year's harvest, freshly slaughtered beef from the farmer over yonder, and potatoes from the root cellar. But the modern world was on its way, and things began to develop at an unprecedented pace. Steamboats and railroads began to speedily transport new foods, fresh, over previously unfathomable distances.
Until then, food had to be consumed relatively close to its source. Steam-driven transportation revolutionizes the global distribution of food.
These innovations culminated in an event that would become known as the Industrial Revolution. The world and our dinners would never be the same. Industrialization created food for the masses.
Industrial food is a food that is relatively inexpensive. It's created to appeal to a very broad range of palates. It's created to last a long time and be easy to ship.
In the 200 or so years since the Industrial Revolution spluttered to life, humans have undergone major shifts in diets, demographics, and seen the emerging domination of processed industrial foods. Processed products began to flood the American market as the corporate giants of today took their first steps. Soup was sold in tin cans from huge factories, and the mass production of milk chocolate meant everyone could enjoy a cheap and tasty treat. Hot dogs became a huge hit on Coney Island. Our love of processed meats was born, and James L. Kraft received a patent for the first processed cheese. Processed foods were promoted as modern, sanitary, and economical. People ate it up. The Roaring Twenties was a time of new money, new music, and new food. The elite, vacationing in the casinos of Tijuana, brought home a culinary sensation. It became the emperor of all salads, the Caesar. Prohibition didn't stop this sensational salad from being paired with a dry gin martini and champagne. But a sweet and legal alternative really began to pop.
Soft drinks didn't really become ingrained in American culture until Prohibition, when people couldn't drink alcohol legally and needed a substitute.
The 1930s were hit by the Great Depression. This was the era of the soup kitchen. Cheap eats defined the decade, and meals like meatloaf and ketchup soup were dinner-time staples. But a world-shattering event was about to alter our food forever.
The troops advance, with the river and smoke screen behind them.
The 1940s were dominated by World War II and rationing.
U.S. food shoppers had to be educated all over again reams of written material and posters showed them how to choose foods for their table that were plentiful and still nutritious.
It had a hugely influential effect on the trajectory of industrialized food.
It often took the background of a certified public accountant to juggle points and products.
The kind of industrialized food system that we have today really didn't start until after the Second World War. What happened during the Second World War was there's an enormous effort to produce food for troops overseas and to get that food to where the troops needed it.
This company operates a plant as complete and self-contained as a factory can be made. Look at the cans going through this line with the zip of machine gun bullets.
That meant that we had to develop a transportation system, and that was when we developed all of the highways across America, the trucking systems, the refrigerated trucking systems. That was when New Yorkers were lucky enough to start eating foods from California.
Women in the post-war world were beginning to enter the workforce, and Mom needed to find a cheap and easy solution for family dinner. Jell-O molds filled with tuna, marshmallows, and other processed foods were at the center of the table. Jell-O is packed with protein, and it was an easy way to stretch out leftovers. The 40s also marked a big shift in the way we farmed our foods.
We see a transition toward a kind of farming that relies on tractors and pesticides and herbicides and seeds that grow really well in that world of those chemicals.
The use of chemical fertilizers and plant hybridization has seen the production of crops like wheat and corn triple. By the time the 50s rolled around, the population and the economy were booming, and corn began to appear on our plates in more ways than the cob.
Production is generally concentrated in the big corn-raising areas of the country. The trend is towards scientific feeding on a large scale.
The astonishing advent of television dominated the culture, and food convenience was becoming king. This all came together in a family favorite of the 1950s, the TV dinner. A popular meal for the family? How about some turkey and gravy, defrosted garden vegetables, and mashed potatoes with dehydrated milk? As appetizing as frozen dinners were, the 50s were really defined by the restaurants that got their starts. The era of fast food was beginning.
Fast food started out with one store, and now there are thousands. And they were able to design a production system at a quality that people liked, that could be sold at very low cost and delivered very quickly. And that's a formula that has lasted a very long time. I remember when I was a teenager, we used to love to go to fast food places and hang out. It was cheap, we could afford it, it was fun, we loved the way it tasted. And what's wrong with that?
Restaurants took an assembly line approach to the kitchen, and its success spawned a legion of imitators. The race was on for the hearts and stomachs of the American people. This was fast food, and you had to keep up. In the 60s, fast food chains continued to expand, and fast food's quest for uniformity and cheapness warped the entire supply chain.
The entire food system has consolidated. So there are only a few companies that sell us meat, sell us chicken, sell us sodas, sell us packaged goods. That's just the way America works. You consolidate, you want highly efficient production systems, with the entire purpose of it being to keep the cost of food as low as possible. That means you can afford to eat a lot of it, and we do.
In the 1970s, a resistance to big, cheap eats began to take root. With the advent of California cuisine, chefs began to champion organic, local, and fresh foods. The farm-to-table movement had appeared on the scene. But there was no stopping fast food. It became the pinnacle of industrial and processed foods. In its wake, diets, farming, the supply chain, and the lives of animals were changed forever. Meat became cheap. Historically reserved for special occasions, people could now afford to eat meat 3 times a day. But what were the repercussions of this titanic shift? Hollyface Farms in Virginia is a holdout from an almost bygone era.
So we move them every day to a new spot to mimic the kind of migratory choreography of herbivores throughout history. It's old grazing techniques with very modern technology. This is a perfect blend of old and new. Let me get them moved here before they get discouraged. All right, come on, honey pots. Suck, suck, come on, gal.
Joel Salatin farms to produce meat. But the lives of these cows is in stark contrast to the fate of bovines in large industrial facilities.
My bottom line take on the modern industrial orthodox food system is that it looks at life as fundamentally mechanical rather than biological. We, as a culture, we simply ask, how can we grow a plant or an animal fatter, faster, bigger, cheaper? We don't ask how to increase its nutrition, its immunological function, how do we make an animal happier, okay? We have a centralized system that's primarily mechanical and views food as inanimate protoplasm. And we view food completely different. We view food as fundamentally biological. It's living, it's life.
Animals in massive feedlots are predominantly fed corn and soybeans to fatten them quickly for slaughter and distribution.
A culture is defined by its religion, its architecture, and its food. What do you think about food culture in the US? It's fast food, you know. That is almost an anti-culture to say that food and food which is life should simply be viewed as a pit stop between the important things in life, as opposed to being important in and of itself. Our mission statement is to develop agricultural prototypes that are environmentally, economically, and emotionally enhancing and facilitate their duplication throughout the world.
Most of us have no idea where our meats and vegetables come from. Americans eat avocados from Mexico or cherries from Chile year-round, regardless of distance or season. In the US, just 8% of farms market and sell their food locally.
Historically, a society or a community that couldn't feed itself was very vulnerable. So the idea of localization is, I think, as much a kind of a community security issue as much as anything.
As a result of the rapidly changing societies, technologies, and appetites of the 20th century, our local supermarket or restaurant has replaced the field as provider of personal sustenance.
The number of farmers are so small that we've become extremely disconnected from our food. Here's the deal. You can't pull people out of participation. You can't pull farmers out of the food system and expect integrity to occur. The only way you can have integrity is to have people involved.
The disconnect between farms and our food coincided with a range of problems. From the 50s to the 70s, cardiovascular disease had become endemic in burger-chomping Western society. In 1977, the US government released a warning against the dangers of red meat. Cholesterol was starting to be discussed. Sales were falling, and the fast food industry was forced to come up with a new strategy. A crispy, golden delight was about to take the fast food industry by storm. The chicken nugget.
Chicken nuggets are a way of using byproducts of chicken production, and the person who invented them was somebody who was promoting the poultry industry in the United States. He got the idea that if you took all these byproducts and ground them up and put them together, you could make them look like chicken and they could be sold very cheaply, hence chicken nuggets.
In 1983, the chicken nugget was introduced to restaurants across the US. They were an instant hit, and the fate of the chicken was sealed. Chicken is the most popular meat in the US. Today, chicken comes from huge industrial farms, where chickens never see the light of day. They now grow twice as big as they did 50 years ago.
The difference between the way we raise chickens and the way the industry raises chickens, our chickens are outside in fresh grass, they've got fresh air, sunshine. Those are all things that are denied to the factory chicken. And of course, this is a problem and why the industry has had to use so many antibiotics to keep them healthy, because of the overload of toxicity in that environment. When it comes to the processing, we process right here on site on the farm as opposed to a centralized processing facility, so that the same person who raised the chicken is also going to participate in its sacrifice. And we think that that's pretty critical in maintaining spiritual and emotional balance. Nobody should kill animals every day. We're going to kill animals, but we're going to intersperse that with a lot of time devoted to the life of the same animal.
In 2017, almost 9 billion chickens and 41 billion pounds of chicken products were produced for the US market. They were fed on 1.2 billion bushels of corn and more than 500 million bushels of soybeans.
There's an old Chinese saying that says if you keep going the way you're going, you're going to end up where you're headed. And the current system is absolutely not sustainable over the long term. It takes way too much energy. The average morsel of food is shipped 1,500 miles. The only reason that works is because energy is cheap. You can't continue to deplete the commons faster than they're being replenished. Over time, water will run out, soil will run out, chemicals will run out, something will get.
But there are some that see the industrial system as an opportunity.
I want to be the biggest butcher in the world.
Sausages, meatballs and chicken nuggets line the shelves of Jaap Korteweeg's boutique butcher shop with a difference. Every item is vegetarian.
I'm a vegetarian butcher. I grew up on a farm. I'm 9th generation farmer. And I started this company 10 years ago because I was a big meat lover.
In the 90s, Jaap witnessed the outbreak of swine flu and mad cow disease in the factory farms of Holland. The tragedy of the animal's death and the needless destruction convinced him that there must be a better way.
I'm not happy with the way we treat animals, we use animals for meat production. And I started thinking about factory farm. What is it? We use animals as machines. We feed them with beans and wheat to make meat. But we don't need them any longer. We developed a machine where we can put the feed that we feed the animals in, and we get very tasty, juicy, plant-based meat. The thing is that a lot of people love meat. We are not against meat, only the way we produce it. And so I started a small vegetarian butcher shop with chefs and meat specialists to develop products who has the same experience as meat.
As a chef, the first thing is the taste and the look has to be incredible. It has to be the same as the thing we are copying. It looks like a chicken nugget, it tastes like a chicken nugget, but guess what? It's only made from plant-based materials. If you sell them in a fast food restaurant, people don't tell the difference. Yeah, the vegetarian butcher is all about comfort food. Everybody thinks vegan or vegetarian food is boring, you only have tofu and falafel. No, you have also the vegetarian meat. So you can make a really nice burger, you can make chicken nuggets, some sausage and sage oil, yeah, name it. You can make everything, but then plant-based.
The vegetarian butcher has worked with food scientists to use soybeans and lupin seeds to recreate the tastes and textures people love. And no one seems to be the wiser.
In Holland we eat a lot of meatballs. We competed in a meatball competition with a big newspaper in Holland. There were 40 contestants and we came in third. So, and there were 9 real butchers in the jury and they didn't have a clue it was vegetarian. With that meatball we show off. You can easily fool people, but that's not what I want to do. I want to give the meat eaters the option, hey, you can also eat vegetarian meat. And yeah, just let the animal be the animal.
Since starting out at this small concept store 10 years ago, the vegetarian butcher's products are now sold in over 4,000 outlets in 15 countries. But Jaap wants more.
Now we're growing very fast and, well, there is a lot of interest from big meat companies all over the world to work together with us. I think it's important to take it to an industrial level because the meat market worldwide is very big. I don't have problems with industrial, with large scale.
Jaap is embracing the industrial food system to change it from within.
We want to go as fast as possible. People can buy the products by the vegetarian butcher, they can buy it by the retailer, they can buy it by the wholesaler. I hope they can buy it by the fast food chains. If it's possible we can work with them, we do it. Because I want to have impact. I want to change the meat production worldwide. That's only possible if you think big.
It's not only the lives of animals that have changed with the industrial production process. Our diets have changed. And it's not just what we eat, it's how much.
Over the 20th century as a whole, global population increases roughly by a factor of 4, which is amazing. You know, nothing like that, as far as we know, had ever happened in the history of the world. But consumption per capita increases by a factor of nearly 20 in the same period. That's what really drives the growth of food production in the 20th century.
The modern system feeds us more than we could ever need, and we embraced it with open minds and open mouths.
Obesity is a really important health problem in America. Roughly 2/3 of Americans are overweight. We overproduce food in this country. The food industry has produced convenience, extraordinary convenience, but what they've done is create a system that encourages us to eat too much, too often, and of the wrong kinds of foods.
The system has been set up to produce sweet, salty, fatty foods for a simple reason. They make money.
It's not like the head of some soft drink company is like rubbing their hands hoping, wishing a childhood obesity epidemic. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders for quarterly profits. Produce, fruits and vegetables, are perishable. They go bad. I mean, they're not very profitable. There's no markup. They're not branded. I mean, the system is just set up to reward the most profitable foods. And unfortunately, profitability and health actually are at odds.
The same evolutionary drive for calorie-rich foods that helped us evolve is now threatening our lives.
The reason we should care about nutrition is because The Global Burden of Disease Study, that's the largest study of human risk factors for disease in history, found that the #1 cause of death in the United States was our diet. The #1 cause of disability in the United States was our diet.
The food choices we make decide our health.
We have tremendous power over our health and destiny and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a healthy enough plant-based diet and other lifestyle changes. It just takes this acknowledgement, this getting this information out there, and then people will make better decisions because they want to be healthy.
The industrialization of food shaped the way we ate for the last century, but it also contributes to many of the biggest environmental challenges we face today.
It's not like good food is a panacea for wellness, okay? But my goodness, it's one of the most controllable things that we can do. Our little moniker is healing the land one bite at a time. And we want people to understand that how you choose to eat today creates the landscape your grandchildren will inherit. And so it's about regeneration, not just sustaining what is.
Even though our diets are wreaking havoc on our environment and our health, there is hope for the future of food. New businesses and technologies are already jostling to be the leaders of the next food revolution. Will the future be meat grown in petri dishes, urban organic farming, or all vegan diets? What will be the future of food?